All right, hi guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a version of Perfumers Portfolio. Well, I guess I should call it a episode of Perfumers Portfolio. And we're going to do it on a perfumer who, even though he's made some fragrances that have seriously almost created a trend in and of itself, I still feel like he is undervalued, if you will. Not everybody kind of puts him up there in the highest echelon, but I think he deserves some respect. And his name is Olivier Cresp. And I'm going to read you a blurb about Mr. Cresp. This is off of Parfumo, by the way. The more popular perfumers get blurbs on them. And so here's what they have to say about Mr. Cresp. Minimalist, simple, and authentic. This is how perfumer Olivier Cresp loves fragrances and life. For him, the path to the world of beautiful fragrances was spontaneous, yet he followed his destiny with passion and great ambition. He was born in 1955 in Grasse, the world-renowned capital of perfume production. But that was not all. Fragrances were also a family affair and tradition in his home. His great-grandfather, grandfather, and father were already in the business. The Cresp family would share scent experiences with freshly harvested blossoms and summer flowers instead of nighttime stories. According to his account, he created his first fragrance at 8 years old in his nursery. So, it was obvious for Olivier Cresp to take up the profession as a perfumer. The charismatic Grand Seigneur moved to the U.S. in the 1970s to be admitted into the High School of Perfume Production. He began his professional career in 1992 at Firmenich. There, he got off to a brilliant start, practically in real time, which to this day has earned him the reputation of true talent and a special nose. During his first year at Firmenich, Thierry Mugler came knocking for a new perfume. An unprecedented potpourri was to strive for that would really, potpourri was to strive for and that would really and truly represent the heavenly name Angel. The exercise succeeded, and Angel is still regarded today as an unparalleled fragrance experience and a real turning point for the perfume industry. Other Grandori's compositions followed, such as Lacoste Pour Femme, Nina for Nina Ricci, and Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue, which I own none of those. Prizes and awards were flowing in addition to the commercial and artistic success. He received the ultimate accolade of Maître Perfumer in 2006, I guess that means Master Perfumer, followed by Perfumer of the Year in 2007. The French State Prize for Services to Art and Culture came in 2012 when he was named Chevalier des Arts et des Lettres. In 2018, the Fragrance Foundation honored him with the Lifetime Achievement Award. In his acceptance speech, the great master himself referred to what the perfume world also still dares to hope for. The best is yet to come. So that's a little blurb on Mr. Cresp. Now, speaking of keeping it in the family, he joined the Persoleil's channel over the last couple months to talk about his own brand that he created, he founded, called Acro. And he claims that it was actually his daughters that pushed him to start the brand himself. So he had always been making fragrances for other brands and other people, and they decided to basically go their own route, which is what some of these perfumers are turning to, because they really were severely underpaid and they were severely underappreciated from these big brands. People like, brands like Tom Ford never even recognized the perfumers. Sometimes you listen to someone like Tom Ford speak and it seems like he almost makes it seem like he created the fragrances. So as more and more information is coming out, real perfume heads like myself aren't really the biggest fan of that. I like it more when the perfumer is given credit a la Frederick Malle. So before we hop into the fragrances that I actually have from Olivier Cresp, and by the way, I should mention again, this is off of Parfumo. So if there are some fragrances that he has made that are not listed on Parfumo, they're not included in this list. So if there are some that you can think of that you've seen from my collection that are not listed, please leave a comment down below. But before we do that, we are going to do Scent of the Day, which has turned into a bit of a ritual on my channel. Today's Scent of the Day is a real amazing fragrance and a great value for money, in my opinion. So this is a fragrance by Histoire de Parfum, and it's basically called Rare Fidelis. Okay? So I love the fact that they do these little 15 ml bottles. So Histoire de Parfum fragrances look like they come in a book, like so. And you get this little card, and it talks about the additions. The Fidelis notes on this fragrance, by the way: cardamom oil, Guatemalan coffee, saffron, cumin oil, rose absolute, raspberry, patchouli, amber, and Laotian oud. So these little 15 ml bottles are absolutely amazing. I love that they do these. I wish more brands did these, because I was able to get 2 of these for something like 80 bucks, you know, from the brand. They were on sale, free shipping, all that stuff a couple months back. Rudy and I took advantage of that deal. Let me give you guys a fresh spray here. The sprayer's not the best, but you know what? For a mini bottle, it works just fine. And this fragrance was created by Julien Rasquinet, who will also get his own Perfumers portfolio video at some point here in the future. And this is an oud fragrance that came out in 2015. It's compared to a fragrance that he did for Frederic Malle, which came out 4 years later, called The Moon. And I have both, and I can tell you there are similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. How can you explain the differences of such a complex scent? So what I would say, just overall, just a grand overall theme that you get with Rare Fidelis, is it starts out very spicy and everything's almost jumbled together. So you get the oud, you get a big dose of cumin, and if you don't like cumin, it might put you off. But if you give up on this scent in the first 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, you're missing out, because as it dries, it turns into something amazingly beautiful. In fact, I plan on doing this is not a top 10 on my coffee fragrances that I have in my collection, and this would definitely make the list somewhere towards the top. I absolutely love the coffee note in this perfume. And there's a Bortnikov that uses real oud. I don't know if Histoire de Parfum uses real oud, or if, you know, as a more niche designer brand, not so much a house like Arige Ladore or Bortnikov, where they use real oud, you know, where they're oud distillers, so to speak. So I don't know if this is real oud or not. If the brand says it is, it is. But there's a Bortnikov fragrance where they do use real oud and coffee, called Lao Oud. And if I was going to buy one more Bortnikov, that's the full bottle that I would get. I love that fragrance. I have a sample, and I've almost gone through it. But this is an absolutely amazing under-the-radar composition. It's not so under the radar because the Moon is a $1,000 fragrance. It's very expensive. So people look for, you know, they look for replacements that aren't as expensive. And while I wouldn't say this is a replacement for the Moon, I would say that if you like that style, this actually reminds people, it reminds me of almost like this berry hookah hashish, well, not hashish, but like this they call it algide, I think in Arabic, hookah. like a raspberry berry hookah type smell with the smoke and everything, because there is supposedly real oud in this Frederick Mall. And you know, there are some differences. Doing a side-to-side comparison, you would definitely tell, but they're close enough in style that I would say if you like one, you should definitely try the other. And this doesn't get very much talk, funnily enough. Rare Fidelis deserves some more talk there. Okay, so that's my scent of the day. Now we're going to move on to the fragrances from Olivier Cresp. And actually, I want to, before we get started, I want to spray Angel, because I only have a sample. I have a couple bottles of Amen, but Olivier Cresp didn't make Amen, but he did make the original Angel in 1992. And I just want to give this a spray. It's been a long time since I've smelled this. So let's see what we get here. Now, I think this is the L'Oreal version, so it's probably not anywhere near as strong as the older versions from Thierry Mugler. But you definitely get that the Amen DNA is taken off of Angel. So you get this big patchouli gourmand with a huge dose of amber. You can really pick up some fruitiness and honey in the background. Can't talk today. There's supposedly like this melon note in the opening of this. Melon was kind of a big thing in the 90s. You know, Millésime Impérial kind of took that and went in a different direction, more of a fresh, saltier, watery type direction. But if you're a patchouli lover, you have to smell Angel. Angel is one of those fragrances that when it came out in 1992, it completely changed the game. Of all of his fragrances, this is the biggest game changer, I would say. And it is full bottle worthy. I don't have a full bottle, as you can see. I only have a sample, but Amen is what I ended up kind of going for when I went for full bottles. But I would love to have a bottle of this, a vintage bottle of this, of course. You know me, with my vintage love. Let me mark this down just in case we spray anything else today. This is Angel. Not that you'll be able to mistake Angel for anything other than Angel. It is so unique and so, it really stands out. I can totally see why this became such a big hit, because at the time it was totally different from anything else that was coming out. So I'm just gonna put this over here, and so that is the first one, Angel from 1992. And he made some fragrances before Angel, by the way, and one of my favorites, which I'm so glad to have this older bottle, because now I think they put them all in the tall, just regular square bottle. If you look up Loewe 001 Man, you'll see the bottle type that I'm talking about. But this is a fragrance from Loewe, and it's called Ascencia. And Ascencia, so you can see, I'll show you the bottom of my bottle. See how it says, oh, let's try this again, shall we? You get back here, camera. Okay, don't go anywhere this time. All right, so let's try this again. Ascencia. Can I show you without knocking everything over? There we go. Made in Spain. Parfums Loewe. And this is an amazing take on a green scent. People compare it to polo green, but in reality, this is much more, I would say, to the fougere style, whereas polo green is more to the chiffre style, if that makes sense. So you get these notes like here, you get a much bigger dose of lavender, but he includes some notes that he starts to play with, later on in this fragrance. Now, this came out a couple years before Angel, okay? This came out in the late 80s. And so what he's done is he started to play with these kind of spicy elements that he starts to use so well in fragrances later on in his career. Like, for example, there's a beautiful spicy nutmeg note in this scent, but really think about an aromatic fougere, but with a ton of notes. There's lavender, there's bergamot, there's tarragon, old school green tarragon in this, which you know, really harkens back to fragrances from the late 70s, early 80s. You're reminded of fragrances like Jules and you're reminded of Paco Rabanne pour Homme and, you know, fragrances in that category, but almost like modernized for the 80s. If you could say the 80s are kind of more modern. There's a huge slug of oak moss in the base. There's also leather. But think about it in an aromatic fougere composition. So you get this fir, you get this green pine, there's vetiver in the base, there's sandalwood, there's cedar, there's patchouli, there's musk, there's all that stuff. And, you know, the green notes just contrast with the citruses, that contrast with the spiciness, that contrast with the fir and the pine, you know, stuff like that. And he uses this style again later on in his career, and I will show you what I'm talking about. Sorry about the pen mark on my hand here. But I'll show you again what I'm talking about once we get to the newer style fragrance that he did updated in this style. At least to my nose, it's an updated version of this. I love them both, but I think for once in my life, I actually like the newer one even better for this style, just because of the route that he went. But we'll talk more about that later. But if you're a fan of old school fragrances, this is almost like a bit of a holy grail fragrance for men. I'm very glad to have this older bottle before they were actually owned by LVMH. LVMH owns Loewe now, so I'm sure this has gone through many reformulations. There's the Loewe brand, if you will, punched into leather in the top of the cap. Interesting, very interesting design, if you will. I like that. I like the idea with the leather on top of the cap. This is only a 50 ml, but it's good enough for me. Very glad to have it. And this was kind of before he hit big time fame. This was kind of an under the radar scent, and it still is an under the radar scent, believe it or not. But for a fougere lover, this is top-notch quality stuff. If you like old school fragrances, even if you like Polo Green, even though they kind of go different routes, you have to get your nose on this. It's amazing stuff. I even smell a bit of a tobacco note, very slightly, even though there's not one listed. There's not a tobacco note listed. I think it gives off the feel of a tobacco note being in there. Very masculine, very old school, and I absolutely love it. So that is Loewe's Ascencia. Okay, so now we're going to jump to the year 1989, so 1 year later. And this is a fragrance that actually came out in the 1940s that he was able to he did a reformulation of this, basically, because in the late 80s, the perfumer who made this in the 40s was really getting up there in age, Edmond Rudnitskas. And the fragrance I'm referring to is Rochas Femme. Now, Rochas Femme, again, this is a little bit of a cheat because it's not his fragrance, but he did a reformulation of this fragrance, and this is the vintage from the late 80s, early 90s, when they used to still use the term parfum de toilette. If you can find a parfum de toilette, you know it's an older bottle because they stopped using that term in the early 1990s. And this is one of the best Chypre fragrances of all time. Hands down. Sorry about that. Some crazy stuff happening out there. So this is one of the best Chypre fragrances of all time. What's happening today? My camera falls over. Wind outside the window, so apologies for that. Stick with me though. We have some amazing fragrances to talk about, and this is one. So I've told you before that my favorite Chypre of all time is Diaghilev. But Diaghilev is built on the backs of fragrances like Rochas Femme. Rochas Femme is this fruity Chypre that uses peach, plum, apricot, you know, those type of notes. So you can kind of think a bit of Mitsuko because Mitsuko has that peach in it. But this has the cumin amped up. And I've never smelled an older bottle of this from like the 40s or 50s or 60s. But my guess is that it was very animalic because what Olivier Cresp did with this reformulation is he used cumin at the top to really amp it up. So I have cumin on my scent of the day, and this is a big cumin fragrance as well. This is probably, if you said, list some of your favorite cumin fragrances, Eau de Hermes by the same perfumer that originally made this scent, Edmond Rudnitskas, is number one. But number two would have to be something close to this because the way that the cumin is used here is so beautiful in the opening. Even if you don't like cumin, I would still urge you to try it because it mixes with these heavy, dense, I mean, look at the color of the juice. These are heavy, dense notes. Like, here's what the notes say, by the way. Peach, jasmine, ylang ylang, prune, amber, musk. So they give you just kind of a broad overview here. There's other notes in it like oak moss, patchouli, vanilla, carnation, rose, iris, rosemary, rosewood, and I get cumin in the top, even though there's no cumin note listed in Parfumo. But just a monster of a Chypre, one of the greatest Chypres of all time. And Olivier Cresp did the reformulation, and he did a fantastic job, at least in this Parfum de Toilette version. So even though this is Rochas Femme, guys, do not be afraid to wear this. Trust me, it is a glorious composition. It just absolutely shines. It has so much depth, so much complexity. And I think I got this bottle for like, I don't remember, $35 or something, or 40 bucks. I mean, the value for money for this fragrance is through the roof, especially when the closest comparison to my nose is Diaghilev. Diaghilev is the closest comparison to this, and that's $1,000 perfume. So there you go. Okay, now we're gonna jump forward a year. And we're going to jump forward a year to the year 1997. And in 1997, there's two fragrances on this list. Both of them are fairly mass appealing. The 90s were a time where everything was kind of watery and everything was, you know, the aquatic wave had kind of come through, if you will. So this is a fragrance from Moschino, and it's called Womo. Now you can see there's a question mark in the O. So again, this is the time where fragrances like CK1 were out, where they were unisex. So what makes this fragrance interesting is it's Womo, question mark. That's kind of the way that Moschino did this fragrance. So it's a masculine fragrance. Here, let's give it a spray, because it's also been a while since I've smelled this bad boy. So it's a masculine fragrance, obviously, but what they were saying is it's built in a way where women can wear it too, which at the time was a revolutionary idea, or it was starting to become more commonplace. But if you go back to the early 90s, there were no unisex fragrances. There were fragrances for men and fragrances for women. And this has this, so here's, I actually have the notes on the back because this is a tester. But here's what it says. It says new Hedione, not old Hedione, new Hedione. transparent coriander, thank God it's transparent, kumquat, in parentheses, Chinese golden orange. So this has a kumquat note in it, which I can't think of many perfumes that have a kumquat note. Heart is cyclamen, cinnamon leaves, and clary sage. Cinnamon leaves must have some sort of different connotation than cinnamon bark, but I couldn't distinguish between the two. It does smell like there's some sort of green cinnamony smell. And then the bottom has cedarwood, artemisia, new amberwood, again, not old amberwood, and sunlight accord. I'm not making that up. Look at the base right there. Sunlight accord. Okay. So there you have it. And this is a Euro Italia. This is a new bottle. This is not a vintage bottle or anything. But for 1997, just to experience this, Parfumo says solar note. This says sunlight accord. This does have this extremely fresh, very easy to wear. A man or a woman could easily wear this. It has hedione in it, but it's not a beast mode fragrance. It's something that you're going to spray on for 4 to 6 hours in the heat probably, and just kind of something easy to wear when you don't want to think about what to wear. But that was one of his 1997 releases. The other fragrance he released in 1997 is a fragrance that is one of my favorite summertime wear fragrances, actually. And it is Vintage Dune pour Homme. Now this came out, and you can see I bought a tester from Le Parfumé a while back. And this fragrance came out in 1997 as well. And so while he was using notes like kumquat and cinnamon leaf and stuff like that in Moschino Uomo, in Dune, he was using stuff like fig and fig tree bark. So there's a couple different layers of fig in this. There's currant leaf, so black currant leaf. There's sage. There is a beautiful rose note in here as well. And there's something called Reseda, R-E-S-E-D-A, which I am not familiar with that note at all. But what I really love about this fragrance is the sandalwood and cedarwood combo that you get in the base. There is a little bit of greenness to it. He created this fragrance with Jean-Pierre Beathout. Beathout is how I would pronounce his name, I think. B-E-T-H-O-U-A-R-T, Beathout. And beautiful composition. Again, beautiful summertime wear. I have a vintage. You can see it actually says Christian Dior on it, which they stopped doing that 20 years ago or so, I think. And this is a tester, but so what? When you want something clean and different, not many people are going to be wearing vintage Dune, I'll tell you that, especially since it is, I want to say it's discontinued. But I could be mistaken on that, but I thought it was completely discontinued. So you can see the entire little top of my bottle comes off, and then it's supposed to be like this, just the cap, but the whole kind of collar of mine comes off. But again, it's an older fragrance. If you can find an older bottle like this, get it. The ones that say Christian, the ones that just say Dior on it have been reformulated, but for a simple, fresh, green, sometimes floral, woody scent, he does these very well. This is something that Olivier Cresp does very, very well. So that is Dune pour Homme. Okay, next we're gonna go to the very next year, which is 1998, and this is one of his creations that really caught the attention of the perfume world. This is almost like another one of those guideposts in Luca Turin, for example, loves this fragrance. And this is a fragrance by Kenzo, and it's called Jungle pour Homme. So you can see the head, if you will, looks like a zebra's mane, the brush on top. And I have a splash bottle, and I have a, oh, it's so good. I have a older bottle before Kenzo was purchased. I think LVMH owns them as well, if I'm not mistaken. But if you can find an older bottle, the boxes look different. I guess if you can find a splash, you know it's an older bottle. But if you can find one with an older style box, you'll be able to tell if you go on eBay or something and look at the different box types. Get one of the older ones, and you will not be disappointed. This is one of the best spicy fragrances I've ever smelled. It does have, for a brief moment, you get a bit of this cola type vibe in the opening, but it's all about the nutmeg and cinnamon and lime. And it just, especially in the summer, this is usually a summer scent, although I wore it in the winter this year and it worked beautifully. But something like this, there's also this mate tea note. So I'll do a top 10. This is not a perfume, or this is not a top 10 tea fragrance video, and this would definitely make it. The mate tea in here is so relaxing, and the gaiac wood and cedar in the base is just gorgeous. One of the best gaiac wood fragrances that I've smelled. Just amazing. Amazing composition, and the fact that you can find this type of perfumery for 40 bucks, 50 bucks, 60 bucks, even if you have to pay double. If the new one's 30, pay 60 and get a vintage, and you will not be disappointed for 100 ml. Amazing masculine fragrance from 1998. So as you can see, he was on a roll in the 90s. And if we jump forward a bit, we're going to jump to the year 2011, and I'm going to show you a collaboration that he did with the great Annick Menardo, and this is called Kokorico. So you can see it has that Jean-Paul Gaultier head. If you put the bottle this way, it almost looks like, or is it this way? Hell, I can't remember. I think it's this one. It looks like a side profile of the Le Male torso. And this is an amazing patchouli fragrance as well. So with Angel, he did something amazing with patchouli. And then they come back with this, with Kokorico. And, you know, Annick Menardo's fragrances historically have been this, very high value for money, if you would. And here, it was the same while this was available. Now it's discontinued and the prices have been jacked up. But if you can get this for under 100 bucks, get it. Because this has this patchouli and cocoa vibe, very similar to Lidge, but there's this freshness from fig leaf. So remember, he was working with fig in Dune a decade before. And so he knows he obviously has an affinity of fig, and it adds a little bit of freshness. And if it's a little bit warmer, I would probably wear this over Lidge. For the colder weather, I prefer Lidge, but if you're a patchouli lover, you have to get your nose on Kokorico. Another one of those designers that's just gone. It's just discontinued already. And, you know, it's sad to see him come out and just get axed like that. Okay, next we're going to jump to one of my cheapie recommendations. If you like the spicy vibe of Jungle Pour Homme, you have to get your nose on this. This is 1881. You can see the bottle, the 1881 bottle by Cerruti, and this is called Bella Notte. And Bella Notte brings almost like he's bringing Kenzo Jungle into the 21st century, if you will. Because it takes that beautiful nutmeg and cinnamon combo, and he adds some coriander and pepper, and he keeps the lime. So again, this is a lime, nutmeg, cinnamon combo. This is a lime, nutmeg, cinnamon combo, but with some modern synthetics is what it feels like to my nose. So it feels like they've used some newer musks, some vanilla in the base, but it doesn't really go super sweet. It is a designer. I got this for like 20 bucks for 100 ml. And 125 ml, excuse me. And there is that freshness because there's juniper in it, but for a designer, absolutely amazing. I want to say that it's discontinued, but I don't know for sure. But if you can find this, this is a great cheapie. Came out in 2014, probably didn't sell very well. But of all the flankers I've smelled of 1881, the original is my favorite. But of all the flankers that are out there, this is the best flanker I've smelled. And there's also this cardamom note, by the way, which I think La Nuit de l'Homme was really popular in 2010 or 2011 or whatever it was. This is 2014. So you can see there's cardamom. There is a jasmine note, but don't let that put you off. It's not going to be like Samsara or anything. So 1881 Bella Notte, if you're looking for a cheapie. Great fragrance. And then probably my favorite fougere, which I know it's a big statement, but it's one of my favorite fougeres, let's say. And it's not a vintage. This is a new formula that he put out with in combination with Fabrice Pellegrin, and they put this out for Amouage in 2016. Look at the fern on the front. The whole point of a fougere was to create a fragrance that smelled, what if the fern had a smell? The fern has no smell. And so it's become the icon of the fougere, and they created one of the best fougeres that they could, and this is the modernized Ascencia to me. So this is the old school, this is brought into the 21st century, and boy, did he ever knock this out of the park. This is one of my favorite fougeres because the lavender in this is so silky smooth, and you get the nutmeg, and you get the cinnamon, and you almost get the nutmeg cinnamon lime combo here. Even though it says lemon in Fragrantica, you feel like you're getting the combo from Kenzo, but you also feel like you're getting the greens from Ascencia. And then what they've done, and the note that just makes it absolutely perfect, is they've added this note of clove. This is my favorite. This is actually my favorite clove fragrance as far as just pure cloves go. The clove in this, I usually don't like clove, or I used to think I didn't like clove. But we're not talking cloves like those clove cigarettes people used to smoke. This is a natural clove. And in the warm weather, which in Texas, that's usually 8-9 months of the year. In the warm weather, Bracken Man is just an amazing fougere. This is a made in Oman bottle. I don't know if there are differences between the made in Oman and made in UK version, but I will say, and also this is the older version where the name is written on the collar, so I don't know if the new version has been reformulated, but God, just smelling it from the cap, it's so classy. It's probably one of the best work scents you could ever imagine, because it's a classic fougere that will harken back to fougeres of old. You know, you'll be reminded of Fougere Royale and, you know, the big fougeres of the past. But it's not Dracar Noir. It's not Cool Water. It's not, you know, those old school fragrances. This is very, very modern. It smells very modern to my nose. And it also smells, it does a trick of smelling clean while also smelling interesting. And that is very hard to do. So for a fougere lover, to me, this is the ultimate. I'm so happy to have a bottle. I almost didn't get a bottle because I was like, it's a fougere. You know, what's the big deal? I have 20 fougeres, but this is something special. Bracken Man and Olivier Cresp. So he deserves his recognition there. Yeah. Now you'll notice something. His new brand that he founded called Acro, I have none of. In fact, I've never even smelled any, I don't think. Not that I can recall. So if you want a breakdown or first impressions on Acro, go to Rich Mitch's channel. He bought the sample set and ran through them. There are some in there like smoke. I'd love to try smoke. I love, you know, incense and smoke in a fragrance. He did one called Awake that has coffee in it. As you can see, I love coffee in a fragrance. Speaking of coffee, oh, it's amazing. Rare Fidelis is amazing. And so, you know, he has this brand that I've never smelled anything of. It's almost like these perfumers creating their own brand kind of reminds me of you know, Mayweather breaking away from Don King and the people who, you know, kind of were making all the money while he was fighting, and then he started making all the money once he started promoting himself. That's what these perfumers starting their own brands remind me of. You know, they're kind of telling the LVMHs, the Guerlains of the world, the Estee Lauders, the L'Oreals, that, hey, forget you guys. If you're going to pay me 30 grand to create a perfume and then I barely get anything else afterwards, I'll just go create my own stuff. And that's what he's doing with his brand Acro. And I completely applaud him for that. And I applaud him for a fantastic career. I love his work. There's a lot in here that I don't own. Like, for example, I don't own Light Blue by Dolce & Gabbana. That came out 2 decades ago. I don't own the newer version of Givenchy Gentleman. I don't own Versace Mano Fresh. I don't own Sedley by Parfums de Marly. I don't own Black XS by Paco Rabanne from 2005. So there's a lot of big names that he did that are just not really my thing. But if you have other Olivier Cresp fragrances that I should check out, let me know down below. If you have experience with some of these, or even his new brand Acro, let me know. So this is kind of a spotlight on the work of Olivier Cresp. Appreciate you watching very much. Cheers, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye-bye.